Over the course of 6 years, the black cab driver John Worboys raped and sexually assaulted more than 100 women. He was jailed back in 2009, but the consequences of his actions are still being picked apart by the courts. The Metropolitan Police is at the Supreme Court fighting a ruling which led to 2 of his victims receiving compensation for failures in their investigation. The case could have serious implications for other victims, as Simon Harris now reports.
For 6 years, London cabbie John Worboys terrorised women passengers who innocently hailed his taxi. He drugged, raped and assaulted more than 100 victims. This is one of 2 women who went to the police but weren't believed. As victims of sex attacks, their identity is protected by the courts. They were later awarded compensation.
In both cases, they felt the police really didn't believe them and didn't do a proper job, and as a result this man was let free and continued to attack other women afterwards.
Today, campaigners staged a small but noisy demonstration outside the Supreme Court, where the Metropolitan Police is trying to overturn the decision to award compensation. The 2 women claim their treatment at the hands of the police amounted to a violation of their human rights. Because the police refused to take seriously their claims about Worboys, they suffered inhuman or degrading treatment. It's that interpretation of European human rights law which Scotland Yard is challenging. In court, the Met's barrister argued the police couldn't be held legally responsible for failing to catch an offender.
The law of this country, that's subject to the Convention, subject to the Human Rights Act, does not recognise a general investigative duty, in part because of a concern that any such duty will reduce the efficacy of police investigations of crime.
Legal experts say a victory for the police could have profound implications in other crimes, like the case of serial killer Stephen Port, who murdered young gay men in East London.
If this appeal was to be won today, there would no longer be a way to hold public bodies accountable. So, for example, people who were victims of Stephen Port, their families wouldn't be able to challenge police failings in that case.
Scotland Yard says whatever the outcome of the case, it will honour the compensation payments to the 2 victims of John Worboys and pay their legal bills. Simon Harris, ITV News, the Supreme Court.
For 14 years, Londoners have got used to the congestion charge. It's one of the largest zones in the world, and other than a temporary extension west, it hasn't changed until now. Could it be set to follow the tube and go 24/7, meaning motorists would have to pay at evenings and weekends? Our political correspondent Simon Harris on the proposal to cut pollution and the reaction to it.
Sitting in a traffic jam in central London doesn't come cheap. Motorists pay £11.50 for the privilege. It's called the congestion charge, and it isn't working. But the Mayor has no plans to scrap it. Instead, he's weighing up whether to extend it to evenings or weekends.
We are working on a new transport strategy that looks at London's needs going forward. Nothing's off the table in relation to addressing the issue of congestion in London.
Including congestion charge at weekends?
Well, we're looking at all options.
Almost 120,000 cars, vans and lorries enter the congestion zone every day. But about half, 58,000, are exempt from paying the charge, including 29,000 taxis and private hire vehicles. The number of minicabs in London has more than doubled in the last 4 years. City Hall is powerless to reverse that trend. But using the congestion charge, it can target private motorists and delivery drivers. This florist makes around 300 deliveries a day, many of them to customers in the congestion zone. The charge has become a fact of life. So has gridlock.
The congestion, in my point, it doesn't work as it is now because it doesn't lower the amount of traffic in the area. So if they extend the hours, I see us as just charging the customers more for no apparent reason.
The Mayor's commitment to cut congestion is driven in part by his war on diesel pollution. City Hall has a new demon in its sights, the internet shopper who gets their parcel delivered to work.
I think we ought to be encouraging employers to ban deliveries, private deliveries to premises in central London. And I do think that we need to be looking at click and collect type facilities.
According to City Hall, internet deliveries to the workplace now take up half the space in many company post rooms.
It's Simon, what options does the Mayor have to change the congestion charge?
Well, the current charge relies on technology available in 2003, and it's quite a blunt instrument. The cameras capture your number plate and you pay a flat rate to enter the zone. It doesn't take into account how long you spend in the zone. But new smarter technology is coming online, which could mean motorists having to pay by the minute or by the hour they drive in the congestion zone. In one sense, technology is causing the problem. The streets are being flooded with mini cabs working for taxi apps like Uber and vans delivering internet shopping, but technology can also solve the problem. In Blackpool, for example, they're trialling a Bluetooth system which will alert drivers based on the flow of traffic about problems ahead and give them an alternative route.
What a difference 14 years makes. Simon, thank you.
The Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, has defended describing the Prime Minister as guffawing like a feeding seal. The Hayes and Harlington MP made the comment in Parliament after this clip of Theresa May laughing at Prime Minister's questions was shared millions of times online. Well, McDonnell spoke to our political correspondent, Simon Harris, for tonight's Late Debate programme on ITV. They discussed whether he'd ever stand for leader and why he's changed his mind on Peter Mandelson. Well, let's talk to Simon now, who's in our Westminster studio. Simon, we'll get to Corbyn and Mandelson in just a moment. But first, what exactly did McDonnell say about Mrs May?
Charlie, Mrs May's convulsion in the Commons last week certainly created plenty of headlines, but no one quite described it in the unflattering terms used by Mr McDonnell at the dispatch box yesterday.
If the Chancellor had spent less time writing stale jokes for his speech and the Prime Minister less time guffawing like a feeding seal on those benches, we would not have been landing this mess.
Was that appropriate, if not just rude?
Well, I was angry. I was really angry because last week we had the Chancellor who spent more time on stale jokes in his speech, and then we saw the Prime Minister literally guffawing. And what was happening? What were they laughing at?
But it's inappropriate language, isn't it?
Inappropriate, it's parliamentary language.
With Labour languishing 17 points behind the Conservatives in the latest opinion poll and the questions about Jeremy Corbyn's leadership refusing to go away, I also asked the Shadow Chancellor if he still has ambitions in that direction. His answer was emphatic.
I tried a couple of times. Jeremy's the leader now. I want to perform this role. I will never stand for the leader of the Labour Party again. Jeremy will be our leader. He'll take us into the next election. We'll win. And I hope he appoints me then as the Chancellor.
Mr McDonnell comes from a wing of the party which has little time for the Blair era, so you might be surprised by his current opinion of a man once known as New Labour's Prince of Darkness, Peter Mandelson. Sadiq Khan has appointed Lord Mandelson to be one of his Brexit advisers. How do you feel about Peter Mandelson being back in power, influencing a Labour politician?
He's got the expertise that we need. Remember, he was a commissioner in Brussels.
So you're happy about Peter Mandelson?
Yeah, but we want to pick his brain as well in terms of our own front bench as well. And the issues here is we need all the expertise coming together.
We'll also be asking, will the Mayor get his way on driving diesels off the streets of London? That's the Late Debate on ITV tonight at midnight.
I'll definitely be watching. Thanks very much, Simon.